Yeah, baby. You rocking. It's been a long time coming, man.
Long time coming.
Yeah.
Are you on 19?
Well, so I released number 19 on Monday, and then I've recorded. This is gonna be the third. I'll have like 4 pending.
Nice.
Yeah. So
Making moves.
yeah, man, I'll be above 20. And Chris Williamson has a clip of him on Instagram of him talking about how the majority or 90% of podcasters, they never make it past episode 20. So it's kind of
a threshold.
Nice. Yeah, man. So, yeah, I'm happy to have you on and to get this rolling. And
it's a pleasure.
It's been, yeah, it's a pleasure to be friends with you. I'm grateful to have met you, and I'm trying to remember the first time we met, whether it was MetaMen or the trend seems to be I've had MetaMen friends on, but also people at Squatch, and I'm trying to remember. I think the first time we met was just here at Squatch.
I think so.
Just a few times coming in, and but really kind of connected through MetaMen and the somatic movement, and I've really enjoyed your unique perspective with dancing and movement. And I was going through your Instagram and looking through all the posts back from 2017, 2018. And you've always had a very lively and full creative expression with your own nature, whether that's photography, dancing, and through words. You're very skilled with how you express the essence of life and where you are at through photography. And then also it's like a combination of all of them. And so I was going through it and I really enjoyed all these different moments. And it's interesting. I when I look back on people's social media and I can see who they were before the COVID lockdowns and how they progress and how they go through life after.
Yeah.
And I did that with like Matt the other day, and it's amazing to see that both you and both him and others, they grow from that and they grow stronger from that. And some people, they don't. They go downwards and they maybe unfortunately strengthen insecurities through unconscious habits. And so
yeah,
I wish I was following you during COVID, because your ability to not really state the obvious of like COVID lockdowns or politics or whatever, but it was just we are on this planet living in this meat suit for a very short moment. It's a blessing and it's a gift to be on this planet.
Yeah. I feel like that's interesting that you bring that up, because I haven't thought about that in a while. But you have to kind of balance out what your impulse is to say something in those circumstances, especially on social media when it's out there.
Yeah.
It could be taken in any way. And then you got to listen to your heart and your soul and just be like, should I do this right now? Or can I transmute whatever this is and be confident in it, in my own embodiment, as I walk through? Why do I need social media to make this statement? Or can I just move on with my life and work? And I feel like that's been my journey moving here to Austin from New York, is exiting this this place of blame and self-shame as well, like shaming myself for having certain feelings, and just like trusting and embodying and literally moving away, and stepping into something that feels more true and feels more like the lion, like just or like the wolf. Like my dad always shared a quote or something like a quote that it was like the wolves move in the shadows. And I always resonated with that, because we make moves in the shadows. We don't always need to make this big, thing. because there's so much going on out there right now. There's so many words. It's so oversaturated. So why not take all of that energy and transmute it within yourself and see what kind of life you can make, especially as it relates to art and podcasting and any kind of spiritual journey is like, how can we, I think it's beautiful that we're able to talk about it in these kind of forms, these sacred forms.
Yeah.
But once it's on social media, it can be broken. And, I've definitely, spoken through poetry a lot with how I feel about what happened with COVID. Because I couldn't actually say to the people around me how I felt for 2 years. I had to keep my mouth shut, which was probably the hardest thing that I've ever done. And, that's including all of my dance training that I've had in my life. It's like when you close this because you're scared of what people might think of you and you're in a career where there's a lot of like reputation at stake. It was really hard. It was really hard, and I bottled it all down, and poetry was away, photography was away, dancing itself was away. I'll never forget my last rehearsal with the Limón Dance Company, which is the company I left and came here. I felt this energy inside of me spiraling through the center of me that was powered by those 2 years of silence. And it was this energy that told me, you can do this. You can step into your power, and you do not need, you don't need what you think you need. You don't need this. I mean, the company was amazing, but you don't need this company in order to be you and as an artist. And that was a really big moment for me somatically too, because I felt this like I was pirouette. It was a ballet class actually, and I was just like spinning. And I've always been kind of more of a contemporary dancer, which is less balletic. But I remember doing like 4 pirouettes and just like feeling this energy, this life force in me that was just like stabilizing me right in the center of my being. And I was like surprised, but also like, this is the energy that I need to follow when I leave this company and move wherever I move.
Yeah. First, I think the word somatic is used so much here in Austin, and I wanted to ask you what the word somatic means.
Somatic, of the body. Anything that relates to any kind of sensory, physical sensory exploration, the mind-body connection. But yeah, for me, like, life is somatic because this is the vessel that we have to experience it. And that's the best way that I know, because, as a dancer growing up, starting at 6 years old, dancing in my grandparents' living room just for fun, that was the way that I expressed myself. And it became the muscle that I used to get through trauma or emotion, deal with emotions or deal with things that were happening in my family. But yes, somatic, we're all somatic. We are somatic. And being able to have a key to that awareness, that door of somatic awareness, is to me like the miracle of life. Being a dancer is the miracle that I have in my life, and having the awareness that I can communicate through just my body. And it's vibration, it's just like someone who would sing. Singing is somatic as well. Talking is somatic. What we're doing is we're sharing this through noises and words, and we're sharing breath. We're sharing all of it. So.
Yeah. For me, just lately at least, I've been trying to be. There's a new concept that comes to mind that I've been thinking about, and it's through my friend Camille. But I think that it's been mentioned at other moments, but it's called somatic integrity. And so your words, your actions, essentially aligning with who you are and your true nature, and how you speak to people, and how you are thinking too. Like the other day, I was driving, and there's many times where you get cut off, and the instantaneous thought is like, this asshole. But immediately I was like, lately I've had more of an acute awareness towards feeling my body, feeling like my emotions more so. And I just took a moment right after I said that, like I thought that, and like listened to my body, just kind of felt how I just focused on placing my attention on my body after saying that. And I immediately was like, why? Why?
Mm.
Why did I say it? Like that's it's just I mean, so many people do that too. Like you get cut off in traffic or some asshole some
It's okay.
someone just kinda, just does something that annoys your ego.
Mhm.
And your unconscious habit is to say something that is not pleasant.
Mhm.
And so anyways, I've been more in tune with that and trying to, on a moment to moment basis, embody that because whenever like over the course of the past, I would say just 2023 in general, I've been trying to align with that and having that alignment. And the more I do it, the more present and at peace I feel.
Mm.
Um, so
Mm.
yeah, I really enjoy seeing your expression and also what you led through MetaMen. So the first one was pretty beautiful. The first ever text that you sent me was a picture of holding us all
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
and so we're in that enclosed pyramid in the middle of San Marcos and nature, and which supposedly what we learned in the last MetaMen retreat was that it is on the same latitude of the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Mm.
I think.
That would be pretty cool.
So the guy that owns Samadhi Yoga Retreat, he came and spoke about it, and I'm pretty sure it's the Great Pyramid of Giza, or it's some like very well-known
Mhm.
ancient structure. I was
There's
like,
that intention in it, so yeah.
yeah. Well, he didn't even know.
Oh, so interesting.
How crazy is
Haha.
that? And so we were dancing. You led us through a bunch of men that
Yeah.
are, I would say, the majority of the guys there, including myself. When I was expecting to go into this, I was a little nervous. I was like, one, I'm not a dancer, and two, this over masculine macho me was like, I don't want to move my body in a weird way, but
Mhm.
you did it in a manner that was just so comfortable, and it wasn't like this super, flamboyant. Not to say that's it. We
Oh,
couldn't do
yeah.
that in the future, but
Yeah.
like it wasn't super flamboyant. It wasn't. We were moving our body in a way in which it was very playful, and it felt like it. There's a quote that I've saved that I'll state later that you said, but essentially like these different somatic movements, they impinge on your nerves and on different muscles so that it activates different chemical responses in your body, and that's what that exactly did
Mm.
for me. And then we did like this one movement exercise where you were just like, we have to just keep moving in and out between each other.
Beehive.
The beehive. And man, I just started giggling like a little
Yeah.
kid. It's just like this playful moment of just not trying to run into each other, but you're like going really fast. And it was after that. I mean, we did ice bath. We were in nature. We did all these different things, all these different modalities. And it was after that, though, where I really felt this release,
Mhm.
and you'd be surprised. I mean, I've lost my voice a little bit through a somatic breath work movement, or not movement, but I mean, I guess in a way
Mhm.
you're moving a little bit, but that I've done for the second time, and it's amazing how powerful it is with releasing layers of emotions and how at ease I am with my flow of consciousness afterwards.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
That's the big thing and this is what I focus on even when I'm teaching a technique, like a classical, modern technique in dance, but more so when I'm teaching improvisation or the stuff that I do at MetaMen is the stream of consciousness is very powerful because in a way you're opening up something to let the floodgates just flow. Like you're just letting whatever wants to come forward to the surface flow. But in order to do that, you need a little bit of structure and discipline. You need, what I do at MetaMen is I give people this structure And it can be very fundamental. It doesn't need to be emotional. Like we start from a very fundamental place. Like I work with texture a lot because usually if people are playing with some idea of texture in the body, they're in this internal laboratory process that takes them out of their judgment, especially for a group of men. And Metamem was the first time that I had ever led a group of men before. And I really was nervous in a way because, I've taught
You
kids.
did a great job.
Thank you. But it was actually through me tapping into my stream of consciousness while leading MetaMen that allowed me to flow with you and give all of the men in that room what they needed in that moment. Because I wasn't writing out this plan. I had ideas. I had a playlist. But once you get in the room, it's this synergy of just, giving people what you feel they need, listening while they're moving to see like where they're hesitant, and then maybe just leaning into that a little bit more so they can, because we have boundaries. I always say this, but we have boundaries. And in a movement practice, what I'm trying to do is expand those boundaries so that, we're either mentally comfortable with just going this amount or physically comfortable. Like we've never most men have never massaged their organs from the inside out and felt shifting inside in a way that's ooh, that's, we can be very, not all men, but in today's society, we can be very superficial. We can be very distal, right? So we don't ever move from this really, primordial deep place. So that's there's a lot down there. It's like scraping the bottom of the ocean and then the dust comes up. There's a lot down there that needs to come up. And I think that makes sense why you had, whether it was through the playfulness or just the whole experience of the movement experience as well, is that you weren't just moving from a superficial place. You were moving from an investigative, curious, and deeper place. Maybe you could go deeper. Maybe, if this was a practice that we all incorporated, that idea of being somatic more often, breath work, dance, maybe we would have less dirt at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's always going to be compiling throughout our life, which is why
keep doing it.
I'm so grateful. And it is such a divine blessing and I don't use that word divine too much, but the one thing that I know is divine is the ability to be a mover in this world and to have that internal and community process with being a mover, whether it's with classically trained dancers or you at MetaMan. And that's what I never got in New York, which was really interesting. In New York, I was very confined to the one way that movement was in your niche. You stay in your lane a little bit. You can always go out and experiment, take classes, but when you're working professionally, you're very much in one mindset. And I was just so grateful to be able to work with a group of men, especially because I never really had male friends growing up. I was only around women. And I never really resonated in middle school with the guys around me. It just felt like everything was a little bit too superficial. And then college, I was one out of 5 men in my class of dancers. And then, dancing professionally, there's a lot of women. And then I moved to Austin and I had this dive into masculinity. I forgave my father for things in the past. And I was it's I healed this wound that opened up all of the men in my life to be accessible and people that can support me and I can support. So when Michelle asked me to lead this, I was nervous, but I was also understanding that this is something very important for me, for my personal journey. And it's not like I'm a know-it-all when I step in the room. I don't know anything more than what you know. I'm just here to tap into that intuition and give all of us what I think we need in that moment in time. And it'll end. We know the practice is going to end. So why not go crazy? Why not really take the risk? There's not enough risk taking in life happening. As it relates to the body, especially, I'm seeing a lot of people at the gym right now do handstands. And I'm super excited about it because it's a sign that people are wanting to invert their reality more. They're wanting to be upside down. They're wanting to take a risk and put what's normally on the ground up in the sky. And that to me is a little movement that I'm excited about because it's a shifting of reality through the body. I never thought of it like that until I just said it, but
Mm,
it feels like that's what's happening right now.
yeah.
And it's a way that we can connect through an altered reality. Maybe
Yeah.
it's too deep. Maybe it's not bad, but
No,
maybe it
no,
is.
no. I think you so going back to what I stated, when you're moving these different aspects of your muscles, the tissues in your body, and the nerves, it does activate. I think different chemicals in your brain, and you like for me. So with the somatic breath work, at the very end of both, I let out some tears, so which I don't normally do on a sober day-to-day reality, as a man that's deemed as somewhat of a weak in certain demographics, it's a weak
Mhm.
thing to do. Um, and I think if you have balance and you're in tune with your emotions as a man, that's very important. It makes you stronger. But anyways, going through, breathing pretty deeply through your mouth,
Mhm.
uh, and having different sensations in my hands, my feet, throughout my entire body, it just activates something. And this is also with like combo. I did combo at the ayahuasca retreat, and there's really at certain moments there's really no conscious thought. It's an energetic release, and I was so hesitant to say just that sentence
Mm.
previously because I thought that sounded too mystical
Mm.
and kind of irrational, non-scientific, non-American, whatever you want to call it, non-Western.
Mhm.
Um, but it's true. I mean, like if you experience it and you try it, it's there are just our body does keep the score.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a book
Mhm.
that is pretty prevalent, and so through that somatic breath work, I man, I mean, there's certain moments where I'm laughing so hard, I have no idea what I'm laughing at,
Mm.
but it feels good. And then
Yeah.
there's moments where certain certain almost like almost visions of my mother who passed when I was very young. At the very end, it was an image of her saying, "I see you, Shane." And I don't really think about her that much because I don't have a lot of memories of her. I don't have a lot of, a major connection because I was so young when she passed. And so, um, this vivid, clear image of her saying that, allowing me to let go in a moment. That doesn't happen typically, uh, for me, and to unleash that and unlock that kind of experience internally
Mm.
through a physiological experiment in a way,
Yeah.
uh, is pretty profound to me. And you know, I wish for at least some of the close people in my life to try to experience this. It might make you nervous. It might make you physically uncomfortable at first. And it also might just seem like out of the standard norms of doing, whether it's somatic breath work or dancing or whatever.
Mm.
Um, just try it. See how you feel
And
after.
it's accessible to all of us. That's the thing. It's like dancing is free. It's like and breathing is well, yeah, I guess it's we could talk about that another time. But
Whoa, breathing's not free?
I don't
Am I
know.
paying money
I
for
don't I don't know. I don't know what happened when I said that, but dancing is free and exploration as it relates to the body is free. And during COVID, when I was trapped in my tiny little 4-bedroom apartment with 3 other guys, all I did was put my music on in my room, plug my headphones in, and I just moved like a maniac. Like if
Mm,
someone looked at me through the window, they'd be like, "What
mm,
the heck is wrong with this guy?" But I think that insecurity, specifically in men, is what we can work on a little bit more because I actually think that standing in your weirdness, standing in your uncommonness is masculine and being okay with that. And that is what's changed me. It's like last night I went to the Concourse Project and I danced, and there's always those moments where you're like, should I really let myself go in front of these strangers right now? And then I'm like, what am I holding myself back? It's going to be contagious if I do that. And if someone were to judge me for moving in a weird way that is very foreign to them, that's on them. right? That's not for me to deal with. So I actually think it's stepping into your masculine to be able to like, get into your sensuality through your movement and to be weird and to sing and do whatever wants to come out, that energetic release that you experience through breath work and dance. Letting that live is important, and we need to do it every day, not just on the dance floor and not just in these tiny little containers, although those are great. It's like when I'm on the airplane, sometimes I subtly just like move like I'm feeling the water in my body, and I'm always like, oh, this person next to me is gonna think I'm like wigging out right now. But what it's doing is, because I have a new fear of airplanes. I just, even though we are so advanced in technology, I don't trust people as much anymore, unfortunately. Um, Although recently I was on a ride back, I think, to Texas from New York, and the guy working, the pilot said the system is telling us, the GPS is telling us to go one way, and there was a storm, and he was like, "Trust me, I've been a pilot for 25 years," and he was a New Yorker, so I trusted him. You do not want me to go on the path, so we have to sit here for 45 minutes and reroute.
Mm.
And I was like, that was such a big moment for me, as it like, that's a human being moment. I don't trust like as much, because people are so reliant on technology, and technology is great and works most of the time, but still I think people are less intuitive,
Mm-hmm.
which relates to what we're talking about. But going back to the moving like water on an airplane, it's a way for me to transmute my fear through movement, even if it's super microcosmic, or microscopic, I should say, even if it's super tiny, just tapping into that movement of water, because water is healing, and it's usually something that allows things to come through and out. Doing that on an airplane, although I may look weird, it's helping me. It's helping me so I don't store that fear inside of my body. And I find moments to do that all day long, whether it's
Yeah.
a calf stretch at the cigar lounge, or, doing 15 push-ups every hour, whatever it is. Yeah, I think this body is the gift that we have to use and explore. And the mind is as well, but the mind and the body are,
Yeah.
it's there, it's together,
These two quotes from friends of ours here, Noah Urbina.
Mhm.
I actually released a specific clip within the episode where he's saying people like watching the quirky, creative person in their element. People enjoy that. Some people might not, because it puts a flame in the insecurities of others that are maybe not following their own authentic expression. And then there's River, who says that don't treat your way of balancing nutrition in a intentional way, or physical exercise, mobility, as a task. Treat it as an honoring, a reverence to your body, because you only have one body, and it's only. I mean, maybe you can do stem cells and all this crazy other shit later on, in like 10 years from now, whatever, or even like Brian Johnson's blueprint. But right now, I mean, I've really I've gravitated towards being very respectful to my body.
Yeah.
And I mean, just, you mentioned something along the lines of having this kind of tension in your throat. And for me, that's something that has appeared so much, I think, throughout my entire life. And I've just lived with that. I've lived with a consistent amount of time throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout months and years of living and being who I am. There's kind of like tension in my throat. And right now I don't have that, because, well, one, I've just been, just practicing different things to like release certain things, but I'm also with someone that I love, and that, I feel like I can just be myself right now. But I've just lived with that tension for a long time. And now I'm focused on why. Why has that come up? Why is it staying there? And maybe it's due to being very, very busy and not processing, like I was talking before. Just like, I've been feeling great. Like, I've been feeling my best self. over the course of the past year. But I've been in grind mode. And so that like constant task oriented mindset has omitted the ability to evaluate and process the things that are happening on a moment to moment basis in my life. And so if you don't always take in certain things where you're like, whoa, what was that? Why am I a little fearful there? Yeah, it can build up. And so that's why I did the somatic breath work the other day. I was like, all right, I've been kind of in grind mode.
Yeah, and it sounded like you released through your voice,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah, I was.
I mean, you lost your voice a little bit,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. So I was. I laughed a little bit, but I'm not a combative person. If someone treats me with disrespect or aggressiveness throughout all my life, I've held it in.
mm,
I hold it in, and there's been moments where my dad is one memory of a guy that was just bullying me all the time, every day. And I kept telling my dad, I was like, this guy's really bothering me. And this was in like middle school. I was like 12 or 13. My dad was like, I don't give a shit if you get in trouble. You next time, if he does it again, tell him what's up. Give him a little something, something.
mhm,
So I did. And that one day, it was like days and days and days of him doing this. He was right next to my locker. And he did something, and I just fucking took him by the shirt, put him against the fucking lockers, and I was like, shut the fuck up.
how old are
I
you?
was like 12 or 13.
Nice.
First time I've ever really been pretty aggressive. Maybe a couple times when I was like really young, just like a little boy. But at that point, he stopped. But anyways,
Well, he felt you
it was a line
physically,
Yeah.
and you let yourself. You know, it's not to say that you advocate, violence of any way, but you showed him physically.
Like this is
You
what
let yourself actually you showed yourself too. You showed yourself what you were capable of after holding things in.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't condone violence in any way. It was a 12, 13-year-old thing that happened, and
no, but the facts is like you physically expressed yourself,
Yeah.
and then what happened after that? Like
he stopped for the most part, like making fun of me or
right.
nagging me. But anyways, where I was going with that was, for the most part, anybody that like would make fun of me or, I could jab back sometimes here and there vocally,
Mhm.
but for the most part, I just keep it in because I'm a pretty peaceful
Oh
person.
yeah.
And so that's taking a toll though, and so this somatic breath work was like, I just yelled really loud a few times,
Mm.
and it was just releasing all of that. And then at the very end, just letting some tears shed to process my mother's death, because I don't take a lot of time to do that, and I think I should, So where I was going with that, I think it's so important. And there's a few other things that popped up when you were talking about not trusting people, and I am the same way.
Mm.
We kind of bonded at the first MetaMen talking about similar decisions with our health that we made during COVID,
Yeah.
not getting the vaccine and whatnot, and just, in a way, I mean, this might sound kind of, I don't want to, in a way, I was talking to Matt the other day on the podcast, and I was like, we were talking about, Nazi Germany and history and communism and where things could lead through like a tyrant of the government in some form or some manner. And we were talking about Russia and Ukraine and how the ecosystem of society was so fearful because you didn't know if your cousin or if your aunt or if your uncle was going to rat on you because you did something against the regime.
Mm-hmm.
And that constant fear was there. And that's due to like that style of government. And so for me, when COVID happened, I knew history somewhat, pretty general, vague. I'm not a history buff, but I could see where things were going and the ostracizing of people, where that could go. And I saw human nature pretty prevalent, in all of its wrongs and rights and love and fear. And it got pretty gruesome. I mean, I was on Twitter
Mm.
and you see some fucked up shit. It's not pleasant.
What fear does to people, what it does to me, what it does to you, what it does to a society is it's overwhelming, and I personally feel like there's been a cloak of fear put over everyone right now. And
That's yeah.
it's still here. It's still
It's
here.
still there, yeah.
We're working through it because we're trying to navigate into a new environment, but we don't understand. I will say, at least for my lifetime, that what happened with COVID, in any position you may take or subjective reality, is the biggest thing that we have experienced to date. And it will be the biggest shift for our society that we may ever experience, unless there is some kind of war. But this kind of war is insane because it's
like psychological
in the mind.
Yeah.
It's in the mind. And I've been
spiritual.
hearing people say, it's a spiritual warfare. And I always kind of like, But then I like zoom out a little bit and I see how much people's behavior has shifted and how people have pinned each other up against a wall and not let them be who they are. And seen my friends, seen me not be able to speak around my friends.
Mhm.
That's wild to me. It's like, especially living in
Family,
New York City.
too.
Yeah, and I
I don't know about you,
was
but-
very blessed with my family.
Well, same here. I had a couple
Yeah.
family members, unfortunately, that
Yeah.
were not pleased with my decision.
Yeah,
But
the thing that hurt a little bit with those people, because I did have some of those people in my family, is when I explained the reality that I was experiencing, that I was being, I was not given another contract because I didn't get the vaccine. And, I'd worked my whole life to get this job. This was going to be a career, long-term job that I was gaining a lot of artistic momentum through. And I was very excited to stay there until I was 40 and retire. So my family, like the people, most of my family were like, most of my family did not get vaccinated as well. And that was a really big reason why I left New York, because I looked around and I said, first of all, I already had COVID. So it felt, delegitimizing my experience of having it and, throughout history and, what we know about virology. Not to get too much into this, but standard, when you have something, there's a certain immunity that you acquire. Obviously this is new turf, so we don't really know too much about it, but that seemed like the common sense reality, which wound up being, what it was.
Mhm.
So I had already had it, so I was just like confused why that wasn't being recognized, why we weren't having those kind of more nuanced conversations and why we weren't recognizing that. But besides that, there were certain members of my family that it was very, there was like a little bit of like, oh, I'm so sorry that you had to get let go of your job. Like it was not like the fight that I wanted to hear
Yeah.
from them. It was disappointing because their reality was different. But it was very interesting to witness that someone who watched you grow up and dance and helped you, motivate you to do those things, all of a sudden it was like the light switch just turned off and they were like, I'm so sorry, but you made a choice.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Really? Yeah.
can we talk about this more? So can you kind of understand understand where I'm coming? It was just like, I don't want to talk about it. Like it was like a wall.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. That to me is interesting.
Well, not to get too far down this,
Uh-oh.
but something I wrote about my ayahuasca retreat in more depth, more detail, and I mentioned this podcast episode with Aubrey Marcus and Robert Malone. Robert Malone is the inventor of the mRNA vaccine. And Robert Malone has gotten a lot of shit. He got banned on Twitter pre-Elon. He's back, and he's going full steam. And now he's not really even known for his scientific invention, but he's known for his courage to, and maybe, I mean, some people might have totally different subjective. I don't know Robert Malone that much either, so I'm not like totally backing him here. I just know I observed what he stated on Aubrey's podcast, but also other podcasts, and I would say both of us have a pretty good sense of intuition when reading people, like a bullshit detector, and I don't detect that in Robert Malone. And he's sacrificed everything. I
Everything.
mean, he's sacrificing, like, he's put his family in danger
And he was
and
vaccinated.
himself. Yeah, and he was vaccinated.
Yeah.
But it's a rather long podcast. To sum it up, he goes to Aubrey, and Aubrey cries at the end. It was like kind of a beautiful thing, but it's a dark beauty. And he says, "We have all succumbed, whether you want to hear this or not, to a military-grade psychological operation. So whether COVID was by accident or it was released on purpose, regardless, the way that it was handled through the media, there was some intention. There was some, and it was so obvious. I've said this a couple times on the podcast. It was just obvious to me. It was like, you see these different people in power that it's like, you are not accelerating human love. You're not bringing light to this earth, to this planet. And that sounds super like cheesy when I say it like that. But I mean, you're not, the steps in which you are taking to move past this, to observe this, are not intelligent, and they're not scalable, and they're not for the benefit of all of, at least trying to be a leader that's helping the majority of society. This is more of a power play. That's just my observation. And so when Robert Malone said that, I felt it, because I had conversations with people like you just said, with your family, that have loved you so much and have been there for all of your experiences for dance. And same with me with other things. But then their mind shuts off with this. It was kind of with the Trump era and all this other shit too. It was like this polarity. It's like social media, the combination of social media and the fear instilled through social media. And like, if you have any wrong think about the status quo with politics and all this other shit, it was like, you're going to be ostracized. We're going to call you out. Like I said I didn't get the vaccine one time when I was working for Charles Schwab. And this client looks at me with his triple mask, maybe, I don't know, double mask, and says to me, "Are you a Trumpster?" I was like, "No, I'm just not sure if I want to take this thing yet." It was just released. It was just created in a very short period of time by pharmaceutical industries that have a track record for damaging the health of many people. It's like, have you done the research? No, no one does the research of like what Johnson & Johnson has. Yes, they maybe create some products that are helpful for people, but they also have damaged, and there have been cases where people, they get hurt and damaged from this.
It's like the most perfect, beautiful disaster that's ever happened. It's actually, it's an artistic piece, the whole thing, how it was.
I agree, yeah.
So, it was brought together through conscious and subconscious, behavior, how we just rolled and changed as a society naturally. Like, that's the artistry in it. It's like, and then now the question is, not to get too much on that, but now the question is, what do we do? What do we do with that? What do we do with our reality? So for me, it was move to a place where you can work, which was Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And people are always so, flabbergasted when I tell them I moved to Texas. But for me, I've never, like what you were talking about when people hear certain words or hear conversations being brought up, it's like they turn off. I've never been like that. I'm always curious to know, and I want to experience it firsthand, right? Like, especially being, a guy who likes men. There's this whole, you're assumed to have all of these beliefs within a gay community.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, I'm going to figure out who I am beyond that on my own. I'm not going to have to subscribe to everything that you believe just because we like the same person. And it's the same with, I'm sure with religion. That's why different, religions are practiced. But for me, it was like, I'm going to move to Texas and I'm going to find out. I'm not going to, like, I have a dear friend who will not enter the state of Texas. She's like protesting.
Yeah, because probably the whole abortion thing.
Well, it is because of that. And I understand to be radical in your beliefs and do certain things like that. That's a choice. But
there's a side of empathy there too. Like, she's got compassion, but it's like, it's not the whole state. It's
exactly. And from what I've experienced from moving to Texas is actually not what it was, when I was a kid, what I thought about Texas coming from a very blue state like New York was you go down there, you're going to get shot and killed, especially for being gay.
Yeah.
I drove through the Midwest. I drove through, many, many red states when I drove cross country. I broke bread with conservative-minded people. I did not let my, sexuality be the main thing in everything that I do. And I had conversations with people that I may disagree with on certain things, but we're able to connect on a human level because, and this is the quote, my stepdad, his grandfather told him he told me that I love and use all the time is we all shit the same. We're all the same. We all shit the same.
Yeah.
And like it's funny, but to me, it's always that reminder. It's like we get so tied up in these tribes and these, but we're all made of the same thing. And that's why I love doing what we do with MetaMen and all of the somatic practices is because you realize that, especially when you start touching other bodies, you're a mirror for one another.
Or even like the eye to eye.
The eye to eye.
Yeah.
You are a mirror. You're feeling other flesh that feels exactly like yours because we're all stemming from the same thing. And that's where I think we need to go. So bringing it back to what do we do with this situation? Mm-hmm. I moved to Austin and I started my own practice rooted in what I believe in, not what I am told to believe in. And that is my radical protest. It is not posting on social media. It's not crying or blaming. You know how bad I wanted to blame? You know how bad I wanted to say, fuck you? Yeah, and you took away something from me and then gaslit me and said that it was my choice and I was the irresponsible one. It hurts. And it's all that here, it needed to come out. I don't know what I would have done.
Insane.
I would have probably gone insane. I would have probably, I've had the least amount of tension in my body and my spirit since moving to Austin in my entire life. And it's because I'm allowing, like you said, that energetic release that it's not necessarily conscious. It's just this energy. You're allowing that to happen in everything you do or as much as what you can do. And you're practicing it through plant medicine. You're practicing it through different modalities by being in communities like here at Squatch. We are practicing our stream of consciousness more and more in this city. And that's why I moved here. I had no idea. I'd never been to Austin.
Same.
I didn't know anyone. I camped for the first 2 weeks that I moved here in McKinney Falls State Park. And I was crying on the phone to my mom. And I'm like, like a little boy. And I was like, what the fuck did I do? Like, what am I just left my whole life. But I felt something here.
What was it that brought that feeling?
It was, a lot of it was, and I will be honest about this, was the influence of certain social media accounts that were here, that I knew were here. But you see, like we were talking about how you're able to kind of, you can know when people are bullshitting and not, and you can really, I look at body language a lot. That's what I pay attention to. Mm-hmm. And these people that were here in Austin on these podcasts and doing all this stuff, I could feel the genuine curiosity to explore beyond the narrative that we were being given about everything.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a holistic family in terms of health. My grandmother's a healing touch practitioner. She works in Western medicine, and she's also very spiritual, so she has a balance. She's a nurse. My mom is a massage therapist and an esthetician, and she works for a holistic skincare line. So it's always been like, what is the root? What is the root? What is the root? It's not ever been this superficial thing. And that's exactly how I dance now. It's like, I will not move a muscle unless it comes from a deep place. I would rather stand on stage and not move at all unless it's coming from somewhere deep. That radical embodiment that I practice is translated into health. And because it's all connected. And, when I was living in New York City, I was drinking a bottle of wine a night, especially during COVID, a bottle of wine a night. I was sick all the time. I was never breathing. I always have had a problem with my breath. I was never breathing. And all these things were just like there, and I couldn't recognize it. And then I drove cross country by myself, never had camped in my entire life. I just bought what I thought I needed to do, bought a car, drove cross country. And I was like, oh shit, there's a whole world out there that's not New York City,
Mm.
and it has something to teach me. And Austin was the first step to do that. Beyond the cross country trip, Austin was where I needed to go to learn. And I don't know if I'm going to be here forever. I miss New York. I miss being told to go fuck myself. I love it. You know, I like want someone to honk at me on the road here, you know, but those are just little things that are ingrained in me.
Why do you want someone to honk at you?
I don't know. It feels like, you know, just like a
New York City, baby.
It's just, you know, but those are habits. Those are things that actually comfort me that I'm used to, but they're maybe not the most healthy thing. Yeah, I think what we have, like what we're doing right now, what we have going on is beyond our comprehension of how it's going to affect us evolutionarily. Like we are upgrading right now through having this conversation, through you starting your podcast. You're doing something to the community. You're giving opportunity to people like me and Noah and Matt and whoever else. You're giving opportunity for stories to be heard. You know, I have never publicly, like in this format, said anything about my beliefs, but I feel super confident and comfortable with you to do that. And to relate it all to dance and movement, it just feels like we're in the right place. And you don't get those moments a lot when you're not in this artistic process that we're in right now. And I think Austin and Squatch and these places, we have a lot to give back.
Yeah.
You know, we have a responsibility right now.
I agree with that.
We do.
And the action to take out, like you were stating during COVID, how do we move from it? How do we act upon that? And to me, you also noted what fear can do to people. So for me, noting when fear comes up on a moment-to-moment basis and asking yourself why, and being in tune with that and having a conscious awareness towards it. And as, once again, as cheesy as it sounds, to really bring light to society, your own light, whatever it may be. For me right now, it feels like, one, improving myself in regards to my health and to my mindset and to all the holistic modalities, but also through this podcast, and to grow from, and to not be afraid to have these conversations, because honestly, yeah, just the expression of our stories of not being vaccinated, even just saying that kind of brings up certain, whoa, what are you saying? Hold up there, buddy. You know, there's a little bit of PTSD for people talking about that. And yeah, I remember watching another Aubrey Marcus podcast where he had this book that shows all these specific events of people taking the vaccine and dying or having a major heart attack directly after. And there's like this guy is like a macro analyst, like very skilled with finding all these different events, and created this book. And Aubrey gave the book to a friend of his, and his friend was a father, 2 daughters and his wife. All of them got vaccinated. And the friend was like, Aubrey, I'm not saying that there isn't truth in here. I'm not saying this is crazy, this book's crazy. I'm saying I can't psychologically bear this right now. I can't bear maybe this truth of information that we were all lied to of the vaccine. And I haven't done a lot of research on this. I'm not trying to say I'm not trying to like confirm that we were lied to, or like state it as a firm conviction. My intuition says we were. But it's very triggering still to this day for us to even talk about that. Were we lied to? Was this out of pharmaceutical profits of companies that, I mean, they did gain billions and billions of dollars? How many people were affected? What was the rate of excess deaths over the course? All this other stuff. And people don't even want to like look into that. And one topic that Matt stated yesterday was you need to hold these people accountable. And
Matt, yeah.
you
I
know,
love
Matt.
him.
And I agree to an extent. Like, you don't want to hold grudges. You don't want to be combative and aggressive. Like, the action forward for me is doing exactly this.
Yes.
It's creating a path forward
Yes.
for a new society.
Yes.
'Cause I'm fucking done with like getting mad on social media, or I didn't really express a lot of anger on social
Yeah.
media. I did express and share things, but it was I think I did it in an okay manner, but it still didn't feel right.
But you're a highly intuitive person, and you know that that's not the modality that is going to help change
Right.
anything. I mean, it
Yeah.
may, like, be like a exclamation point in someone's day, but it's not gonna shift their reality.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, and so Matt was just saying how, like, a lot of people have just forgotten about all of this, and they're just trying to put it in the past and bury it, and it's like,
uh-uh.
I think we should definitely remember what happened, because if we don't hold accountability to the people that are in politics or in government bodies, they're just gonna do it again. They're just gonna do certain irresponsible things again. No one enjoyed COVID, whether you're vaccinated or not.
Mhm.
No one enjoyed it. I can probably make that assumption.
Mhm.
It was terrible. And the way that it was handled was
Horrible.
it was horrible, man.
Yeah,
And
no,
yeah.
I think going I love Matt, because Matt and I have very similar ideas, but we go about how we execute them and communicate them in different ways. So do you.
Yeah.
Um, for me, the way that I feel I'm meant deeply and intuitively to shift the paradigm is to do it through art and do it through dance.
Mhm.
And, you know, my absence in the company that I was let go of was my protest. My absence, that's how I feel about it. I didn't need to,
Yeah.
scream at the director, and I did. I cried a lot to my director. It was very weird crying to your boss. But I was losing everything. Um, but my protest is my absence, and my protest is also what I do from here and how responsibly I do that. And what I say responsibly is how the discipline of staying true to myself without being someone that lacks compassion and someone that wants to throw everything in the fire. I do want to throw everything in the fire some days. I want to shake people until they wake up all the time. But that's not to me, that's not the artist's way. The artist's way is interweaving your message through your dancing,
Mhm.
through your poetry, through your rehearsal processes, through your storytelling. Like a lot of the dancers here in Austin, they're always like, "Why did you move from New York?" And then when I tell them my story, I said, this is how I always say it. I'm like, "Well, we probably should have a glass of wine when we talk about this. But if you really want to know, like, do you want the PG version or do you want the rated R version?" And everyone always wants the rated R version. And I'll tell them, and 50% of the time people are like, they go deer in headlights. And then the other half are like, "Holy shit." Like, they're vaccinated. They picked another route. They decided what was best for them. But through telling the story and through being here, the presence of leaving the company that I left, it's, you know, it's impactful enough to be a protest and then to say, I'm going to continue making art. I'm going to I'm going to keep going. I'm not, cuz there was a moment when I was camping here in Texas that I said to myself, I'm never going to be a dancer ever again. Like, it was a very existential, ego connected moment where, like, I was like, because I'm not in this company, because it's a really big company in New York, it was one of the dreams, and I trained for a long time to get there. But when I lost that, I said to myself, well, I reached the peak of the mountain, so now I don't have that. So what's the point? And every day it's a challenge to be able to, like, step into the studio by myself and say, like, you're worth creating something. Like, you have something to say. What it is that I have to say, that's the hard part that I need to figure out. So for the next few months, I'm going to be very, very in a very disciplined process, training every single day, like ballet, everything, every single day.
I feel like you've been doing that.
I have, but this is different because now my goal is to create a 40-minute solo for myself. So one dance, 40 minutes long, just me. And I don't know why 40 minutes is the time that I want, but I want to play with duration. I want to play with what I have to say in 40 minutes. And in order to do that, I have to set myself up. I can't go on social media and post and yell and scream. Like, my energy has to be conserved, and it has to be used in a responsible way to share my story. So I feel like that's my bigger thing, like my big mission that makes a lot of sense why I didn't, my intuition told me not to, like,
Yeah.
ruin your reputation by saying things that you may have just wanted to say in the heat of the moment.
Right. You've done it very eloquently. I respect you for the statement, my absence is my protest. That sticks with me.
Mm.
And it's somewhat of the word that comes to mind is wise way of dealing with it. At a young age, you're still in your 20s, and you had the courage to move forward with a decision that was so fucking difficult. And also, I'm sure you went back and forth like me.
Yep.
Should I get vaccinated? Am I doing the wrong thing? But you stuck with your intuition, and usually your intuition's right.
Yeah.
For the most part. And yeah, there's a couple different, sides of your story that have shown that I didn't know. So I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, thanks for letting me speak about it. And it's always easier to speak about this kind of experience with someone who's went through something similar, but still it's taking the time to actually process it, in this format is very helpful for me too.
Mm.
And it's a practice of courage and bravery to be able to say, what you couldn't say for 2 years. And be like it's like coming out like the breeze.
Mm.
It's coming out like a cool breeze that just happens naturally without force. And that's, if I don't like to use the word pride a lot because I don't think it's a virtue. Pride.
Jordan Peterson has stated pride used to be considered a sin.
Yeah.
Or a vice.
Right.
Yeah.
But if I could find some kind of parallel word for pride that was just like, like this for myself,
Mm-hmm.
it would be, I've gotten to the place where I can speak these words without
Yeah.
it's just coming out. And I'm so in awe of how that happened. I don't know how it happened, but I think it was through following intuition, which is what you and I do with everything, which is what I wish more people would do.
Well, and if you don't follow your intuition, if you stayed tense like that, you would have stuck with a group of people, maybe a group of people and friends, and in an environment that does not help you reflect who you truly are. Like you're just trying to maintain the status quo and the norms,
or not listening to what I'm meant to do in this life.
Yeah.
Like, I have to wonder sometimes, I don't know if it's true or not, but all of the happenings that we went through over the past 3 years, if it was some kind of upgrade that we were meant to take advantage of,
I think it was.
I think so. I don't know for sure.
At least right now, presently.
Right, because what it's doing is it's allowing us to upgrade, and we're aware of it, and we're better for it. But it's about, like, following the intuition is about the mission that you're on as well. Like the mission that you were maybe designed to be on in a weird way. It's like, Frodo leaving the Shire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like Frodo leaving the Shire. I always go back to that story.
Same.
That story is why I got in my car and drove cross country, because I knew intuitively that putting myself in a very uncomfortable and potentially dangerous situation, financially, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all that, it was going to teach me the lessons that I needed for something later on, which was moving to Texas, which was being in a campsite, crying to my mom, and then getting through it and building a life for myself here. It was learning.
Yeah, it comes back to the concept of, through the force of inertia, your mind, your energy, who you are, it provides you with the mechanisms and ways to just accelerate through that very difficult moment in a way that you wouldn't be able to do if you were protected. financially, physically, and whatnot. So taking that leap, many people do it, and many of the people that I've had on the podcast, they have this same leap of getting through this inertia of Noah Urbina called it the comfortable complacency chasm, where life is just good enough for you to get by, but is it really lively?
Mm.
Are you passionate, feeling fucking fulfilled? There's a lot of people that are just riding that roller coaster.
Yeah.
On slow mode.
That feeling, that passionate feeling, I feel like there's a degree of risk that has to be there in order to feel that risk of change, risk of experiencing something. Like, I am terrified of scuba diving. I did
it.
Oh my God.
I've done it a few times. I'm more scared now.
I am terrified of sharks.
Tell you a story about it.
Please. But I know it's something I have to do one day. I have to do it.
Oh man, my story's not going to make you want to do it.
I'm sure it's not, but I probably need to hear it, because that nervousness, it's like stepping on stage to present a new work for the first time. That nervousness that eyeballs will see, people will see, your souls will see your work, your art as a dancer. That nervousness is so important, because it's a teacher, and it's fuel.
Pain is information.
Pain is information. And that's kind of what I was talking to you about previously before we started. It's like last night I was at the club, and I was for some reason, like the thoughts of the fear of dying or the fear of getting sick just kept coming through. And usually, like, it's like a stress rash, right? It's like when you start to think about getting sick, you'll physically manifest as a symptom. And those are always reminders of like what you need to do. Like, do you need to cool off a little bit? Do you need to take more time to breathe? But pain is information. It's a teacher, which brings me to the whole thing of COVID. Was when I did get COVID, I prayed. I prayed to live, but I also prayed that my body would upgrade and learn from it. The beautiful, disastrous feeling that I was having, that wasn't as bad as some other people. But every time I get sick now, because of that experience of when I first had COVID and the fear that I had, because all the fear that was placed on it, which makes it worse.
I was just going to say, it weakens your, that's the whole, like, not to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
But this
That's
whole
a good
thing,
point.
like, how much fear. I was one of the most, in the most fearful states for a long period of time. And I mean, fear weakens your immune system.
Well, think about a dancer going on stage. If they hold fear as their main component,
the mind killer.
There's no way they're doing a double pirouette. There's no way that they're balancing. They are handicapped. They are taken down from the fear. It's a destructive thing that limits you from your full potential. And after I first got COVID, I didn't get sick for months. Like, sometimes you get a cold, because the lesson I had from that, my mom and I, we would just like walk around with this, like, I remember we were walking around with this glow in grocery stores, and like just like embodying this kind of health, like what it really is. It's like this lack of fear in a sense. And
after you both got it.
Yeah. And it was like, it was pretty powerful. It was pretty powerful because it was a constant awareness of healing all the time. And if you were to be hit and exposed with something, like, if you shift your mindset to, this is something that's teaching my body, this is something that's helping my body, actually, as uncomfortable as it is, I think you have a better chance of surviving that experience. It's like people who have anxiety attacks, like when they're starting to think, well, if someone gets triggered to have an anxiety attack, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know, but from my experience, if you're having an anxiety attack and you start thinking about the anxiety and you start thinking about all of the things that it's going to affect down, like later on, that thing is going to get worse. You're going to probably have a lot harder of a time than if you felt that experience somatically, you transmuted it through your body, which we don't all have the tools to do. Some people would yell at me and say, oh, I'm just privileged to have those tools. No, I want to share those tools. I want to share what's helped with me. I hate that. I hate when people bring up this whole privilege thing. It's like,
You can do it. I mean,
we can all do
we
it,
can
and
do
if we just open ourselves and stop labeling people as one thing or another, maybe we can actually help each other. But I don't remember where I was going with that, but yeah.
Your mom, you were
Yeah,
yeah.
fear, pain, information. You know, if I start to get, like, the other day I got really bad rash from the turf outside in the heat, the community workout. And instead of going to Barton, which I wanted to do if everyone was there and they were all having a good time and I wanted to see everyone, I went home and I showered and I slept because that's what my body needed. My symptoms were telling me, you need to cool off. Your temperature needs to change. And that's exactly, and then the next day, today I woke up and I was okay.
Mm.
But the body told me.
Yeah.
The body never lies. It's always going to tell you.
Yeah. That was a problem that I had when I was a kid. I was very social. And I think that's why I do this, because I love connecting with so many different personalities and minds. But I would have like, I would host at my parents' house, just like flashlight attack. And I would always be the one that hosts it. And I'd invite, like, sometimes it'd be 20 people, sometimes it'd be 8, but I would just always gather all these different people. And, growing up, like as a kid, into a teenager, into college, I did not listen to my body at all.
Mm-hmm.
I sacrificed that information that was received, and those signals were ignored, which sacrificed my health, and it just compounded for years, like just years. And there was a breaking point, and so that just came to mind when you
Yeah.
said, like, you took the time to be like, at the end of the day, people remark you can do all these different modalities, sauna, ice, all this stuff, but at the end of the day, the people that live the longest have the best relationships, right? Long-term relationships. And yeah, going out to hang out with people, like I went to Barton Springs yesterday too, and I probably could have went back home and just like laid on my couch for an hour because I had just finished a podcast session, and my mind was, this is a lot of energy. It's fantastic, but like you are, when you're talking and connecting with people in the studio for 2 hours, it's a lot of energy that you're expending. So I like how you highlighted that, because even when you have the opportunity to do something that's pleasurable, but you can feel in your bones that you should probably not do it because you need to rest. Not many people have that impulse.
I think we're starting to highlight that here in the culture, in this kind of community, like especially as it relates to sleep. Like, I used to be the kind of kid that wanted to stay up all night so I can experience all of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Last one at the party.
Yeah. And now I'm like, I respect the boundary of I need to go home, or I need to turn my lights off, or I need to close my computer, because I know that tomorrow is going to be the day I want it to be in terms of what I can sense, how my nervous system is. I got to go to sleep if I want to have that day that I want to experience. Also relates to food. I just don't eat shit anymore because I don't care to feel like shit. And I don't know when that switch happened, but it is so far in the past, the idea of eating things that
Yeah.
it's not even a sacrifice anymore.
No, yeah,
It's a habit that changed.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to be able to have a clear, conscious conversation with you right now.
Yeah, there was 12 dozen donuts in there.
Oh, did they look divine?
They looked fucking phenomenal.
They look divine, but I can look at that, I can sniff it like a candle and be like, ooh, that was good. And then I can move forward. I can move forward because I value, and that's what fasting has taught me a lot of that too. It's like, and I can take that to a crazy level sometimes and not eat enough. But yeah, it's like you consume, whatever you consume is what you're gonna get. And I think that, people who have problems with porn, people who have problems watching too much TV, which, I've had both of those problems in my life. And even if I fall back and I'm human and I watch something I probably know is not great for me, I'm trying to build this relationship. It's not always going to be
Mm,
this upward, you know. I'm trying to build this relationship so that it's a more conscious relationship with what I'm doing.
mhm.
Um which I think, you know, I think it's really fucked up how accessible specifically porn was as a kid and how that fucked us up, and we don't talk about that enough.
I mean, I started watching when I started smoking weed, drinking, and watching porn 13, 14 years
Yeah,
old. So young.
yeah.
It fucked me up.
It fucked you up because now you have this dopamine hit that you can always get, and what's worse is it's related to your sexuality, which then no longer becomes sacred, and then now we're living in a society where we're glamorizing and romanticizing all of these sexual fetishes and kinks that are claiming to be sacred but have no really connection to earth and awareness of how we got here to these crazy things. Like I don't get it. I
Mm.
get it, but I also think that we need to take a time out.
The slippery slope of just
It's addictive.
pleasure feels good in the moment,
Yeah.
but if you're lustful for an intermediate to long term time, I mean, it contorts you I mean, into it could be even madness. Like,
It could be madness.
yeah.
It could connect to deep sickness, long-term addiction. I think abstinence, the word abstinence triggers a lot of people. For me, I think it's actually a really beautiful thing. Abstaining
Mm-hmm.
from something that you desire and the transmutation energetically that happens in the body. Like I really want to drink, but I'm not. What is that process of abstaining from alcohol? What happens in that gray area that we often just either like get really mad about and run away from the drink or we run to the drink? Like what's
Mm,
in that middle ground? What is there to discover? That I think is the real true healing,
yeah.
the reconnection is that place where you know, I was practicing, you know, abstinence sexually for a while, and I have never gained a more deep friendship with myself than from that experience.
Mm,
And then when I would go back to, you know, self-pleasure, it was um it was like even romantic to myself. It was honoring, it was sacred. It wasn't this like, I'm gonna watch this thing to feel this thing. It was this like thinking, this gratitude for the body, which is like, that's what I want in a partner.
which is also like a sign of self respect,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is
Taking the time.
super important.
Oh God. Taking the time with yourself and not just trying to like, you know, explode physically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's what I want in a partner. And it's very hard in my, I'm not even gonna say in my community, but it's very hard to find that as a gay dude.
Mm.
It's hard because, you know, not to get too much into this, and you know, I guess I can say this because I like men, but um, it's a it's a hard culture rooted in what I
There's
believe
still a lot
is
of deep shame, would you
a
say?
lot of shame, a
Yeah.
lot of protection, a lot of armor, and I understand why it's there. I've been talking about this a lot this week to a lot of my friends. Is I understand why it's there. However, I don't think that we should just keep nosediving into it. I think that we should take abstinence as an opportunity to self-reflect and see what we can actually make healthier instead of say, you know, all this is healthy and anyone who believes differently, you know, you can go to hell because you're just a bigot or you're just a homophobe or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's like, no, like let's analyze how we feel in the club. Do we feel like we're connecting? Do we feel like we're maybe taking some issue from the past and projecting it? And this is the same for, you know, people who are
Yeah. Yeah.
heterosexual as
Yeah.
well, right? I go into a regular
Yep.
non-gay club and I look at the women and the men and the interactions and it's blasphemy. It's scary, right?
Yeah.
But I'm interested in creating, you know, for myself, but also within communities, more soul level
Mm.
connection where we can practice that idea of abstinence and not feel so, you know, pulled by our desires and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Never knew my grandfather on my dad's side, and he turned out to be like later in his life. We discovered he was gay. At least not me. I've never met him, but and he was like, according to multiple family members, he was a raging alcoholic, but he was also very smart, very creative. Any trade that he would get into, he could tackle. His ability to navigate these different trades. The way that I look at it, I've never really had this conversation with my family, but the way that I look at it, that I've interpreted it, is that he suppressed who he really was for his whole life, growing up in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, being a gay man. I mean, you know, hiding that you're gay and hiding and suppressing all of your creativity. You know, you stated, and I did the same during COVID. You drank more, and I did too, and so many people did. And they ate like shit and
Mm-hmm.
didn't go to the gym because you couldn't go to the gym for some areas. But you use those, you drink and do all this stuff to like shove shit down sometimes. So I think that's what he did, and ultimately he damaged, um, he damaged other family members. And but yeah, I think just to reflect on your comment of shame within the gay community, it's like, um, if you don't deal with that appropriately, um, in my grandfather's example, you might physically hurt someone, emotionally or mentally, whatever it may be. And there's so many fucking examples of fathers beating their kid. That was like the norm,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, back then. There were private schools that parents, like our parents' generation, it was normal to beat them in front of the class, right? So for a parent to beat them was normal. But there was also, there's like alcohol was just so, if you watch like the Peaky Blinders, they're just constantly drinking all the time, all day long. And so anyways, I'm on a tangent, but I think that, to comment on you trying to find a partner that doesn't hold that much shame and true connection and
Yeah.
yeah.
I want to try to vocalize something based off what you said is, we're obviously living in a different time. And, I stopped myself from speaking a lot about this because I understand and I'm reverent to the idea that like things have changed a lot for
Yeah.
the gay community.
Yeah.
And, the pendulum has definitely swung now. Um, I think it's I think it's correct, the behavior that is happening. It makes sense given the amount of repression and, because, we've experienced that in other ways through the COVID stuff and everything. But so it makes sense of how that can add up and create certain behaviors.
Yeah, and there almost seems to be an excessive, like, abundance of pride in this as well.
Right. So now the pendulum has swung, right? Because there is the availability of all of this freedom of expression as a gay man or gay woman or whatever. But now we've swung it to the point where it's actually becoming hatred towards other people who believe other things, whether it be religious.
Even like transgender, like
It's a whole thing. So for me, yes, the way that we have shifted our idea of men and women, yes. Um, it's not a beautiful rainbow community anymore. It's not, in my opinion, and that may detach me and make people dislike me a lot for saying that. But however, it's a filtration system for me to have people who want to live more beyond their sexuality. And I understand why people are so mad at some people for not believing in them. And people grow up in families where, have to be very sensitive when I talk about this, because some people really do grow up in families where they are not allowed to be gay or they're not accepted. I was accepted. My mom was practically forcing me to come out of the closet because I was dating women up until the end of high school.
yeah.
But it was a shame thing for myself, right? And it I don't know where it came from, but I was scared for myself to like men.
Well, I
So
mean, where did it come from? It came from society.
it came from society, right? But now,
Well said.
so for me, I was pushed in the thorn bushes in middle school for liking dudes that
Really?
I didn't know I liked dudes by a woman.
Not metaphorically? Oh, so
No,
what?
I was
Yeah.
for being,
Yeah.
and I was, made fun of for my little high pitched voice, my little chipmunk voice, which I don't have anymore. uh, I didn't exercise that out. I just don't have that anymore. But I recognize that, it wasn't worth holding on to that. It wasn't. And I've spoken to a lot of gay men who agree, and they're just like, yeah, you believe in what you believe, and we can still sit at the dinner table. Like I've sat at the dinner table with plenty of conservatives, especially in South Carolina when I was there during COVID for a little bit. And it's amazing what we can connect on beyond that topic. And they're actually quite more accepting than you realize of homosexuality. Even they may not want their son or their daughter to necessarily like, that's not the goal, because maybe evolutionarily they want to pass down this, what, I don't know.
Mm.
But we don't need to talk about that. We don't need to talk about what goes on beyond the bedroom, inside the bedroom. We can connect on our life skills. And, I doubt throughout history we've, had sexuality at the top of the list. It's like, what can you build for me? Can you teach me how to do this? Build a fire. Can you sew clothes? How do I learn how to do that? Like practical things that we don't really need to do anymore because everything is so mass produced and we don't do any work. So last thing I'm going to say on this, I've always said that one of the best ways to get to know yourself is to just throw yourself in the woods, quite literally, and realize what's important. Your survival is going to be really important. So, and this sounds really harsh, and I understand this is going to sound harsh, but when people are experiencing any kind of like, trauma or dysphoria or confusion, ambiguity in the body, whatever it may relate to, not going to name things, but whatever it may relate to in their personal life, depression, anxiety, go to the woods and walk and maybe even camp by yourself. And although harsh, I think a lot of the problems will fall to the margins of the paper, and you'll be left with what's really important, which is your breath, your ability to move and be healthy, what you eat, how to stay warm. And those things will teach you a lot about who you really are beyond, I go in my bed with a man, or I go in my bed with a woman.
Wow. Yeah. Nature can be healing for sure. And one thing that comes to mind when you mentioned sitting at the same table with a conservative, there was a podcast episode on Joe Rogan with this African American that has made friends with dozens of white Ku Klux Klan.
Shit.
Crazy though. So this is like even more, in my opinion.
Yeah.
This is more polarizing.
Yeah.
Right. And this guy has been able to sit down with dozens of these Ku Klux Klan members. And at the end of the day, or at the end of the conversation, they show love for each other and connection.
Wild.
Fucking magical. It's like that's magic.
Yeah.
That he's able to do that. He's able to. I actually now, honestly, I might watch this episode soon because it doesn't. And that is an example. It doesn't matter what demographic you're from. It's just an example of human connection and like the power of just coming back to the simplicity of being a human being.
And we all shit the same.
And we all shit the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I would be really curious to watch that.
I'll try to find it after this. I'll make it a point to find it and I'll send it to you. Cause I think there's like multiple, it's not just like solely Joe Rogan. I think there's like there could be a book on it. There's other conversations on it. And this guy is just like, I mean, dude, he's just an amazing human being.
Mm-hmm.
You can just, through the conversation that he engages with, it's just
There's definitely a lot you can take out of that.
Oh yeah.
As any person, white, black, Asian, anything, you can take. There's got to be a lot to take out of that. Yeah, just compassion and sacrifice and surrender, and knowing the greater goal, the bigger vision here of human connection, even when it's potentially dangerous. That's wild.
Right. I mean, like any one of those moments, it could have backfired.
Of course.
It could have gotten violent. It could have like they could have had a gun. They might have had a gun and just reacted with anger
Yeah, he stepped into the fire.
many times.
Yeah, which is that's a beautiful lesson, to step into the fire. Yeah. Mm.
To continue on that, it's Fire and Ice. I think coming up this month.
June
June.
17th.
It's been a while since we've done it.
Have you been to Fire and
No.
Ice? Oh, you should come. Are you gonna be away?
Well, no, I think I might be coming back before that. I gotta figure out my flight, but I plan on coming back before that. I did watch some of your videos on your Instagram. They were awesome. They pumped me up.
Fire and Ice.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe Lucky has created he's created something that has inspired me. He's my roommate. He inspires me in many ways. He's a very interesting guy. His brain works in a totally different way than mine, and that's why I think we work so well together, both in that Fire and Ice space, but also living together. But he's created a 3-hour ritual that is really fundamental. But the people he brings onto it, and the energy he puts into it, and the music he plays while it, and like the idea of like being in an ice bath with a bunch of people around you cheering you on while fire spinners are in your face, warming your face as you're freezing cold. Because his whole thing is about contrast. He's, Fire and Ice is something that I hope it's okay that I say this, but it's something that he did, all of the things that happen in Fire Ice. When he was at his lowest point, all of the things that happened in Fire Ice is what he did every day for months or weeks. So it's his ritual that he's sharing with other people. Ice baths, breath work, fire spinning. He spins fire, which I really want to learn how to do. Dance, ecstatic dance, connection, journaling, stuff like that. It's very fundamental things, but the way that he organizes it is like a beautiful piece of art.
I mean, I love how it's at night, obviously.
Oh yeah.
The fire, you kind of need that,
Yeah. Yeah, because we do have a little bit of a bonfire, and we stand around it and do more breath work there. And the first time I went to it, it was the realization that I wanted to be a part of Squatch in a deeper way.
Really?
That was the reason. He asked me to take photos for it because somehow, he found out I was a photographer, so I came and I took some videos for him. And I went and I was like, holy shit, like you would never see this in New York. Like this would not happen in the Northeast. People would go crazy if they saw something like this. And it's totally normal here in Austin. It's totally accepted. And people scream and people get wild, and each time there's a different theme. And this upcoming one is the idea of presence, which I'm excited for because presence is a great way to practice any kind of healing. And I think that's kind of the undertone of this right now, is like to get tools, but also to heal from like all of the months that we haven't had a Fire and Ice. Like there's been a lot of time.
Well, so when I did the somatic breath work the other day, losing my voice, I was asked to share one-worded intention with the breath work before we engaged into it, and it was presence.
What does presence mean to you?
What does presence mean to me?
Without thinking about it.
Okay. To me, it's being content with who you are and being engaged from a moment-to-moment basis of the beauty of life. Simple as that, I think. And I mean, I could start to ramble on it, but it's a tool too. I mean, like your breath is the tool to come back to presence whenever you're engaged in this American way of life of consistently being busy to either potentially survival in the financial realm, whatever it may be, social security, but it's a tool to come back when it gets a little bit too much. That busyness, get, you know, it becomes overwhelming, and presence is like it's all we have, and it's always there for you to engage with.
It's to me, it's magic. It's like the idea of, are you looking at something or are you seeing something?
Mm.
That distinction is like, especially as a dance artist, it's like when you're in a studio with mirrors or blank walls, it's really hard to imagine that you're in front of an audience or in some kind of landscape to create an environment for what you're dancing for. But there's ways to really see things, whether it's through the imagination or actually like I'm looking in your eye. I'm trying more and more to look in people's eyes more because it's a sign of presence, seeing and not and feeling all the uncomfortable little things in my belly that happens when I look someone in the eyes, especially if I'm like, if they're an attractive person, it's like, ooh. But seeing is a switch that I think relates to presence because you're taking in and giving, taking in and giving, and it's you have to stay in it. And the moment you start looking, you can tell because you've just snapped out of it. You've just went into a different state of being. It's a trance to see because you're not in this judgment place where like you may have thoughts that come up, but then you come back and you see and it's this giving and receiving that's happening. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it's pure. It's just like pure awareness.
Pure
Pure
awareness,
awareness.
and there's a flow between, especially as it's when it's relational, there's a flow that's happening that I believe is the most connective thing that we can do.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm looking at that tree. I'm looking at that tree.
The way that I frame it is like before human beings discovered language and thoughts, or just like words, they're in a constant state of pure awareness.
Ooh.
And it's just the way that I feel like I've had a few experiences of this. And it's been through a book of Krishnamurti, and it's called Total Freedom. And it's just him for 300 pages dissecting what is going on in your mind. And most of the time comes back to your mind's ability to judge and its security almost all the time.
Say that again. It's your mind's ability to
make certain judgments in order to come back to to be secure.
To
be secure.
Yes.
And there's a little bit more to it. The book is fantastic and this guy is amazing.
We're just like machines.
But he breaks it down so granularly that you're simply step by step walking it through. And like and there's like in the book there's questions of people asking him and he's answering. And for me, I try to like embody certain things that he said.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of looking at this camera, and as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking that I'm looking at the camera, but instead I'm purely aware at it without thinking and having that process. It's like you're just engaging with life and the energy of life without any conscious thoughts. That's like what I would define as pure awareness too.
Yeah. It's
and maybe you find that in dance.
I was just gonna say, so when I was dancing for the Limón Company, Logan, who's the rehearsal director, we always had these like nerdy conversations about the work because it's so different, it's so niche. And she said you have to be earnest when you're doing that work, or otherwise it could look like bad dancing. And what I took away from that changed everything for me because when I move in these shapes now, as much as I'm trying to have them come from a deep place, now I'm believing everything. And it's that same thing that you were just doing. It's like you're not even really aware that there's an audience. The audience is watching you experience something. So that's the shift. That was the shift for me. Is like you can have a dancer go on stage and they can be, with the audience, and we're not looking and they're still aware. And there's a kind of a performative thing. And I'm not interested in that anymore, because I did that. It's cute. It's fun. It's exciting. It's technical at times. What I'm interested in is creating pieces for dancers and for myself that are required to be experienced by the mover, so that the people are now watching someone experience something. So this is what I call it, like dance theater. It's because you're watching, like an actor can't think about what he's saying while he's doing. He has to just say it. He has to believe it. He has to be so entranced. Like if you look at Jim Carrey, how crazy he goes. He's one of my biggest inspirations.
Same here.
Biggest inspiration.
Since I was a little kid.
Since I was a little kid.
Same.
The Grinch is my favorite movie ever made. I watch it in July. I watch it 3 times a year outside of Christmas.
That's awesome that's like a motivator or like an idol of yours, because he was for me too.
Because he's presence.
Yeah.
He's
dude, liar too.
Liar. He goes and he doesn't care because he's so entranced by his experience.
Oh, dude.
And that's what I want to. That's what I want to be as a performer. A performer. Because am I really a performer, or am I just this human being sharing my experience with you? And that's what I'd rather. I want to shift the paradigm in the dance world to that.
Well, to slide into paradigm shifting, and not to get too far into this because I'm not really proficient in this realm, but AI and the future of AI, and everybody just being so gung-ho about it, right? And the future of creativity and the human experience, some people have remarked, and I think I side with this, that human creativity and that human experience and the pure awareness, I think the value of that, the placement of value on that, is going to accentuate more.
Yes.
As AI and robotics and everything becomes more robotic, and we go through these humps of jobs being decimated for the human being to perform, and everything, like all the mundane tasks, like more and more mundane tasks are completed by other things.
Machines.
Just like the creativity and the art of just being a human being.
Right. The fleshiness of your human experience is going to be very highly valued. I agree with that. It's something that I'm always trying to focus on. And I think that idea that we were just talking about with dance, about being earnest and experiencing, I think that's how we get back to that. Because I think we've lost a lot of it already. I think the moment that we were given cell phones as children, we lost it.
Earnest? Like the ability
to be earnest and the ability to be honest. And I think this relates a lot to why we're not able to say how we really feel as with it, how it relates to the COVID, narrative, how we're not able to trust our intuition and our truth anymore because we have been so magnetized and put under a spell by all of these devices that we hold and their importance in our life. And for me, it's not hard to say what I really want to say if I'm here and moving and fleshy and I'm experimenting with what I'm saying through my body, and I'm okay if it sounds wrong and fucked up sometimes, and I forgive, and someone else will forgive me because they're in that same space. It's okay. We're meant to say shit that we're not, 100% in belief of, because we're playing, we're learning. And the moment we started to not, I was having a drink with a friend last night talking about this, the moment where campfires were taken away, campfires as a literal thing, but also as a symbol of discourse and disagreement, was the moment we separated more. Because if you can't sit down with someone that has different beliefs than you anymore, because it's not politically correct to do that, I can't even be in the same room as you. You believe that. I'm not even gonna have a conversation with you. I can't even be in the same room as you. Well, then we have no chance of connecting. We have absolutely no. I'd argue that there's more connection between the Black guy and those people than we have, in many of our relationships in our life, because they're able to sit down with their disagreements and talk about it or not talk about it and tie themselves together energetically. And I truly believe that we need to bring more campfires back.
I love campfires.
We love it because it fuels our soul. It fuels our heart. It's innate for us to connect and to learn and to grow and to discover and to disagree. And then, like, imagine we're two different people and we're sitting at a campfire and we disagree on something. We have a choice. We have a choice to understand each other's side, or we have a choice to face the reality that we're just going to disagree and move on to the next thing. Because we're not going to sit there and kill each other, right? Like, we're not going to attack each other. We're probably going to roast a marshmallow or something. But we have a choice, and then we become aware of that choice. And even if we disagree and don't want to talk about it, we're aware of that. We're aware that we just made that decision, and that connects us. Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah, it does.
So
that's so interesting.
Yeah, it's because it's presence and awareness.
It connects us that we made the agreement.
We made the agreement.
That we don't agree on this.
And we're not going to talk about it, but it connects us.
It does. Yeah, that's, oh, wow.
So now, So now we're in these spaces like New York where if I'm not vaccinated and I may believe the vaccine is not the right thing for everyone or myself, I can take either position. Just bringing up that topic in general is a no, not allowed.
I mean, your episode's going to have the COVID label on it.
Good. Label me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Oh, I love
Good.
it. Yeah.
I love it. Good. I embrace it. You know, I used to get really mad about that. I did post a story once getting really angry about that because it covers the bottom of the Instagram thing. Good. You know, Spotify, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's unfortunate that I wasn't able to have those. I wasn't able to break bread with people and have those conversations and potentially hear their reasoning, get to know their reasoning for why they believed in their standpoint. You know, maybe it would have been shifted a little bit in one direction or believed, but we couldn't have the conversation to begin with. We were told what to believe. That's the problem. And the fact that celebrities and big name people and companies can just get behind that and expect us, people who are curious and aware, to believe anything they've ever said after them doing that. Like, I used to respect a lot of artists out there.
It was pretty crazy to watch certain celebrities or well-known people and their true colors showed in that moment. And they might have, and they're who they were in that moment.
And it could have been survival and money and reputation, the things that I could have easily just copped out of and done the same thing. It's very hard.
There's much more on the line. There's so many eyes on you.
But there's so many people that, celebrities and big name people in my company that didn't want to get the vaccine and they just didn't say anything about it. There's so many people.
It's like that tennis player too.
Yeah.
He's like, you know, there's certain viral videos that he said, oh man, I'm going to butcher it, but this reporter was just asking, like, why are you putting everything on the line? Like your championship with this tennis match. He's like, my decision to make, my ability to make certain decisions of what I do with my own body matters more to me, that integrity. And it was just like mic drop. And the reporter, I don't remember what the reporter did after, but it was like, you know, that reporter was like, there's something that just clicked with them. They're like, yeah, I feel what you just said.
Because the body is, for athletes like myself and him and other people, the body is the temple, right? So if you do something that disagrees or goes against that belief, that temple, you might as well not do it. It's like the same thing I said, like, I'd rather move with intention and the alternative would be to not move at all, because your body it's literally your temple. And I could not, you know, I couldn't even lie. I couldn't even lie about, you know, getting vaccinated or anything. I couldn't even bring myself to do that.
Yeah.
It's pointless.
Yeah, I knew people like getting fake cards and I just didn't.
Stands against all my principles.
I just didn't want to do that.
Take the easy road. No, I'm going to take the fucking road that has no trail on it, and I'm going to build the trail. And that's when I came to Squatch and I saw the Trailblazer poster in there. It's like, you know, I don't remember what the quote is, but it's something about, you know, trailblazing.
Your own path. Yeah.
Your own path. And that is like, you know, knocking down all that shit. Like, it's work, but you grow from it. And that's the life that I want to live. It's not the be safe and get taken care of and do your thing and be told what to do. That's not the life that I want to live. The life that I want to live, the life that I only know how to live, and my grandmother taught me this. My grandmother is a highly intuitive person. She should have her on the podcast. She's in New York. She would blow your brain.
Call her up.
She would blow your marbles.
Bring her on.
We could Skype her in or something. She is one of a kind, but she's a highly intuitive person, and she like passed that down to me, like skipped a generation. My mom's intuitive too, but my grandma's like next level. And I would, at this point in my life, I would die before I let go of my intuition. I would actually die. My body would get sick and I would die. I know it because it's happened. The only times that I've gotten sick in my young adult life is when I stopped following my intuition. I stopped listening to myself. There's a connection right there.
And I've heard this. I mean, in previous episodes, I've mentioned Joe Dispenza.
Yeah.
And how he talks about internal ailments that you do not, like if you suppress them, they come out. And even River talked about this.
Oh yeah.
He talks about authenticity. He's got a post on, I think it's Instagram. He's got a post and he talks about how when you do not follow your own authentic expression, the people around you do not know who you are, and you won't know who you are. And then he states it's like the cause of ailments. Like it's the cause of anxiety. It's the cause of depression. It's even the cause of cancer. That's what he said. Inflammation, all this, which is mind-blowing.
Well, it makes sense. It's the bottling. It's the bottling thing.
But man, that is such a woo-woo thing to think about right now.
Sure.
Or to even state to people, like, if you don't authentically express yourself, you're gonna get cancer. Or I mean, that's like a
fuck it, say it. It's like it's true in many ways. In some way, and it's a complex system, right? It's a complex system. Genetics play a role in a lot of things as well, but it's the same thing about your panic attack getting worse. It's clarity is something that is hard to get. Maybe not effortful, because I think clarity requires a lot of letting go and trusting, but it's hard because it requires a lot of sacrifice. I'm learning that at 27 finally, that clarity is not the easiest route, but it is the most efficient, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it still provides, clarity has been an invitation to become healthier in moments in which I've had multiple panic attacks or a lot of like ongoing anxiety, and to just sit with yourself in multiple ways or multiple moments, like you just are able to recognize what's not best for you.
And I feel like your experiencing of plant medicine recently is only growing that connection to clarity.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I give myself the recognition of the improvements I've made, and I hope to kind of shine a light on that a little bit more for myself. But I mean, the improvement I've made on myself, I mean, it's like I don't have to put any effort into like not wanting to drink and not wanting to consume unhealthy. It's like pretty effortless. It's like there's an ease to it. And the plant medicine helped with that, with like this just wave of life kind of.
Yeah.
And to also deal with pain, to deal with shame in a really great way.
What's a good way you think you can give yourself that recognition more often? Maybe it's this moment. Maybe it's
in a way it's like this right now, this expression, talking about it and also writing about it and sharing it with people. And I think those two forms, writing and vocalizing, it's been very fulfilling.
And they help you share it with yourself, which is ultimately what's going to be the light bulb, is like having these conversations is also having the conversation with yourself, because I'm just a mirror.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What you're saying right now is just to a reflection, and it's beautiful. But then also like understanding that you can give that to yourself. It's why is it's always the hardest thing to give yourself the recognition, like for myself as well.
Well, something I recently heard was we go through emotional, intense things as we're young, and our conscious is so we think we're at the center of the world. We don't have a lot of context, and when we deal with really intense emotional states that are not pleasant, we put up these walls. And sometimes as we get older, those walls, they're not a house, a loving house for yourself. It's a prison. But at some point, it gave you the ability to survive and have a better way to live when you were so young. But yeah, those walls that were protecting you become prisons.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you said it's so difficult for us, I think that that's a huge reason why.
Mm. Speaking of walls, I just created a piece. I wish you could have seen it. It was called Wall, and it was based off of a German-Austrian film called The Wall, which was based off of a book called Die Wand, which is The Wall. And it's about a woman who goes into the middle of the Austrian forest or somewhere in Germany. And she goes with a couple, and there's a dog. It's very beautiful. And the couple leaves for the town, and she stays back and falls asleep. And she wakes up the next day, and no one's there. She's by herself in the middle of the woods. And she goes to walk to the town, and it's, talk about a cinematic moment. She walks down this trail, and the dog's following. Though the dog walks in front of her, and all of a sudden you hear this cry, this wheezing from the dog, and she runs over, and he's like, looks like he's hurt. And then she walks up past where he was, because he stops, and she hits this invisible wall that is surrounding the entire premise of her in the middle of the woods. And it's this like big metaphor of being trapped inside of this reality, but also having the freedom inside of that. Because like what I played with in this dance piece was the idea of, we are living in a system, whether we want to know it or not. There's laws of nature. There are. But there's freedom when we recognize those laws of nature. But we have to play, the freedom comes within that. I think consciously we can explore more of our nature, but physically, this is a chair. I can't poke my finger through it. And the way I set up this dance piece was that in the piece itself, it was played by a live string quartet, Invoke. This was for our last show, Kaleidoscope. And there's a wall, invisible wall. You can't see it, but the dancers are imagining it's there, going back to that earnesty and experiencing. And it starts with them just feeling this wall. And then eventually it goes from feeling it to becoming aware that they're trapped, to having a panic attack, to surrendering to the reality that they'll be there forever in the rest of their life. And it's 4 women. It's very powerful. These women are badass women. And at the end, I kind of told them that like maybe like the 4 of them are sisters, and they're in this experience together, whether they're biological sisters or not. But the most interesting thing about this that I wanted to bring up was, you have your 4 walls, which are representative of the construct, the structure that we live in, we have to live in. But up on top, it's open sky. There's no wall on top. There's no cap. So if you can you imagine that? So you have the ground, and then you have your 4 walls, but up there is the heavens, is the sky. You can see birds coming in and out of the wall. They're free, but you can't fly. So you're dealing with this reality that there is freedom. You can't fly, so you have to operate within these walls, understanding that there is still freedom, but you just can't actually get out of the wall. And I don't know how we got here, but to me, creating that piece brought up a lot of truths about my life, and playing in those truths and playing with those realities. And like, how cool is it that as a choreographer, I get to experience that lesson in making a piece in 5 weeks and not even know what's happening until it's happening. Like, you're a magician, and you're also a student to your own work. So I just want to share that because you were talking about walls, but I think it relates to clarity as well, because those women had to come to terms with the panic of being trapped by reality, the reality that they were in physically. that's invisible, which is the other cool thing, because the wall is invisible. It's not something you can see. So it represents the invisible, metaphorical, spiritual reality of there are certain structures and borders to our reality that create our experience. This is our video game. If humans could fly, that would be a different reality, but we can't. So we're working under what we got.
I think that's a great way to conclude it.
Yeah.
Ty, this is one hell of a conversation. I didn't even use my notes.
No notes.
And I've said in the past, every time that happens, it's always a great combo. I love you, brother.
I love you too.
And if you'd like to share where people can find you, this is your opportunity.
Okay. You can find me on the east side of Austin all the time. You can find me at the local Juice Land on East Side Austin. I go there once a day. You can find me mainly at First Street Studio, which is at 701 Tillery Street currently. I teach classes there, 2 classes a week, Tuesday mornings, Tuesday nights. They are mainly professional level classes for dancers out there. But I will also have events coming up in the near future for anyone to explore movement. Might be bringing Calibrate back, might be bringing some other interesting twist to that kind of event.
What I was going to say is I've had River on.
Yeah.
And Camille is coming on tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's how, your Calibrate was where we fully, all 3 of us connected.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool.
You were there for that one?
Yes.
For when Camille was there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
You can find me at Squatch Frontier Fitness. I'm a trainer there. I help run the gym. And you can find me on Instagram at Ty Lyons Graynor. And I love sharing photos of my life and sharing art and the beauty of dance. And yeah. But thank you for having me on. It's cool. This is cool. I'm not used to this. I'm a mover, right?
Yeah.
But I felt this entire time that my dance has been with my voice with you. So thank you for being my partner.
Oh man. Blood.
Thanks for being my partner.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you. And peace out, everybody.
Peace out.